would apply to it, but rather I would just like to speak about something that I think Pam might have wanted us to address if she was here with us today. I think Pam McConnell looked at election to public office the same way that I do, and I think pretty well everybody in here, and hopefully everybody that gets elected to single office. It's the single highest calling, the single biggest honor, the single biggest responsibility one could ever have. And she acted that way, and I have less exposure to her in terms of years, number of years than others here. But she acted that way in everything she did. The energy, the passion, the respect for people, the civility, the respect for both colleagues and public servants and for people. Heaven knows that doesn't mean she agreed with everyone, including me, at all times, and she could be a very formidable adversary. In fact, she just had to look at you a certain way, and you were immediately nervous about that. But having said that, she understood that being a formidable adversary did not mean, and in fact should not mean, getting personal or polarizing. She was one of the people here, and I think it was her own words, that would look for an island. And I think those were her actual words, a place between two shores where people could land and kind of sort things out. And as we've worked here to achieve a greater degree of stability and decorum in recent times, she was a very important influencer in that. I do remember, and I have been here long enough to sort of see her, I'll call it patrolling around the council, and she'd be going, yes, to possibly pursue items that she was interested in, but more to kind of have a word here and have a word there as a means of trying to find that island. And I think one of the greatest honors we could pay to Pam would be to consider that island, to look for it, to land on it as often as we can in the coming months and years. And I can say that I'll be trying hard to do that, and I'll be exercising vigilance in another very important respect that I think Pam would have approved of. I have been astounded in the first 3 years that I've been here at the number of times elected officials have been, I'll just use the word plain out, disrespectful in their public encounters with public servants. Public servants do an outstanding job for us. They're not perfect because nobody's perfect. But the way in which they sometimes are treated in this chamber is not acceptable, nor is it fair, because public servants are often not in a position to respond. I don't think I ever heard or saw Pam McConnell treat a public servant with disrespect. And that is one of the many reasons why Heather Ann told me when I was recently chatting with her, the family received so many notes of tribute from public servants because they appreciated the way in which Pam dealt with them. That is the model. And in furtherance of that model, the Pam McConnell model, I want my colleagues to know that I'm going to be more vigilant in the coming months in politely but clearly calling out instances in which that starts to happen here, because it shouldn't. And I think that if there's one thing among many that we could do in Pam's honor, it would be to continue with that approach and make sure that we all follow it. And so I pledge myself in Pam's honor to reaching for that higher level of collaboration and collegiality and civility in this chamber. Lawyers prove in courtrooms every day that it is possible to have diametrically opposed positions, to advocate strongly for your point of view, but to do so without insults or histrionics. They're not allowed to do it in courtrooms, but they certainly advocate for their case, as she did, in a way that was firm, that was intelligent, that was committed, that was nonetheless, though, polite and civil. And I know that Pam would have wanted us to try harder to do the same, to search for that island without sacrificing principles, because you don't have to. So again, I would just say to Pam's family, and there'll be others who will talk more specifically about the things that we have talked about over the last couple of months, the work that she did in so many different areas of the city. But again, I would say to her family, thank you for sharing her with us and with the people of the City of Toronto, that I think I can speak for all of us in saying that we will pledge to continue with the work that was important to her and that was such an important part in making this city one of the cities that is deemed to be the most livable in the world and deemed to be one of the most admired in the world. But saying all of that, recognizing at the same time there is much of that work that remains to be done, and that she would expect us to do, and that she wants us to do, and that she's watching over us to make sure we do. And I think we run the risk if we don't do it. First of all, that would be a mistake for our city, but I think she'd also be giving us one of those looks from where she is, hopefully in a happy place. But I wanted to say that you have again our condolences on your loss, because it was your loss, and in a very real way that we can't understand except in the context of our own family. But it was also a great loss for the city and for all of the people of Toronto, And so we do extend our condolences to you, and we're very glad that you could be here with us today to hear these words spoken, knowing that words are of some comfort, but cannot possibly reflect the affection and the admiration and the respect we had for Pam and for all of the work that she did over so many years. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I hold many fond memories of Pam McConnell. She was a strong woman, best remembered for her role in advocating poverty reduction and the revitalization of the Regent Park neighborhood. My condolences and well wishes go to her friends and family for their loss. At this point, I would like to invite members of council who would like to say a few words. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Speaker. I have very honored this morning to read a statement from the family of Deputy Mayor Pam McConnell to our council. We would like to thank the Mayor and members of City Council, City staff, colleagues, friends, and neighbors from across Toronto for their outpouring of sympathy and support following the death of our wife, mother, and Nana Pam. In particular, we would like to thank the Protocol Services staff and the support of the Mayor's office and members of council offices for their tireless efforts to assist us in executing the celebration of Pam's life on August the 25th. Human resources and pension, payroll, and employee benefits have also been extremely helpful as we go through this transition. We would like to give special thanks to Pam's past and current office staff that assisted her in achieving all that she did. Claudia, Kelly, Sean, and Tom have continued to be a resource to our family through the organizing of the service and in receiving communications from the public, for which we are very grateful. More broadly, to members of council and all city staff, we wanted to remind you of the tremendous esteem that Pam held the institution of the City of Toronto in, and the importance of that role that you all share in growing our city in the most equitable way possible. Regardless of political differences or disagreements over particular policy approaches, Pam would always come home from a long day of work or council meeting and speak of the respect she had for each one of you. If there is one thing you can do in her memory, it will be to treat each other with kindness and respect as you continue your work together in the best interests of all Torontonians. Jim McConnell, Heather Ann McConnell, Madeline McConnell. And I'd also like to extend my condolences to the family here today, and very happy that you're able to be with us today. We haven't met since July 7th at that terrible moment in the afternoon when we heard at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that our dear colleague, our friend, had left us. So surprising that that had happened. I think we've been in shock since then, and this is our very first council meeting since that time. Pam had been actively on council right up until the last council meeting that she missed. So I think it's very hard. It's going to be hard for me, be hard for others here today in this chamber. I would like to say a number of us are wearing bright colors today because Pam always wore bright colors. This green was one of her faves. Purple was one of her faves. Everybody's got a nice bright color on because Pam wore bright colors. She was a very bright personality. And she loved that orange that you have on there, Maria. She just loved those bright colors. So in honor of her presence not here, we are creating that color presence here. I also have on a little button that says Re-elect Pam McConnell, because it's a little yellow and black button that one of the many wakes that I attended, the family had found in the drawer and kept all of her things. So one day we'll see all of the election materials, all of the things that this magnificent woman had done, and her promises that she kept over and over and over again to her community and to the city. And at the funeral, I talked about Pam's list. Pam had a list, and Pam would like us to do certain things. She'd like us to build more affordable housing and tackle poverty. She wants to make sure we get Regent Park completed, or else. She wants a library in Regent Park. She wants to make sure St. Jamestown is properly redeveloped. And she wants to see a beautiful new ferry terminal developed at the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal. So now that she's gone, I think my friends, my colleagues, we all have Pam's list. And let's pledge to make sure that we honor her memory in the way the family has asked, by our caring and thoughtfulness with one another, our respectful disagreements, and in completing those things that Pam felt so strongly about, and for the community that she loved so much. Thanks very much for being here, family. We will do our best to honor your mother, your wife, your grandma, your friend. We loved her very much. We know you did too, and we're really going to miss her. And today's a difficult day for us all.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Mihevc.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I too want to extend my condolences to Pam's family. I've known Pam since 1996-97 during the anti-megacity fight, and we've been colleagues ever since. I think in each term of her office here, she has something very concrete to show for the work, for her efforts in her local community. Of course, there's the Wellesley Community Center and Library for the St. James town community. There's the Artscape Daniel Spectrum and the Regent Park Aquatic Center. I think she served her local community so well, and these are real places that her family will be, and we will all be able to point to in the years to come as really showing her spirit at work. But the piece that I feel where she kind of really excelled was when Mayor Tory appointed her as the anti-poverty champion in the City of Toronto. What I think that showed as she developed in that portfolio was Pam as teacher. She had a wonderful way of explaining the struggle of working against poverty in our community. It's easy to say you're against poverty, but to really unpack that and say, okay, what does it really mean? What are the things that we need to focus on as a city? Pam had a wonderful way of explaining it. She would put up her hand and she would say there are 5 key areas to fighting poverty. 1 is housing stability, access to service, transit equity, food security, and quality jobs with living incomes. The palm represents social inclusion in the delivery of the programs, which means that it is not just up to us, those who have perhaps more power and privilege, to enact those programs, but you had to have people who have experienced poverty in the conversations determining how the strategy was going to unfold. So the palm represented social inclusion in the delivery of the programs, and the fist represented systemic change. I hope that my pledge in the days and months and years to come is to continue that legacy of Pam in this area of dire need in our city, to bridge the gap between those who have and those who do not have. At the conclusion of the wonderful celebration at the cathedral in late August, Paula did a wonderful thing in the way she allowed Pam's spirit to infuse the church at the time. And certainly for me, when we work on anti-poverty work here as council, I think we can all say loudly and feel loudly, Pam McConnell presente. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mihevc. Councillor Cressy.
Well, thank you, Chair, and to the family and friends. Like many of you, Pam's passing, it shook me to my core in a way I hadn't expected. It really did leave me feeling numb. Pam was part of my family. And let me say a few words both for my family, my parents, and myself. Back in the early 80s, Pam and my aunt worked at the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association together. And in 1982 and 1985, Pam and my mother ran on a joint ticket here at City Hall. My mother is the local councillor and Pam is the school trustee. And in 85, it was Pam, my mother, and Barbara Hall together representing a ward, Metro, City, and School Board. 3 women, all in their 30s, in the early 80s. They were a force. And they were young, but they were proud feminists in a time when the Prime Minister didn't declare himself a feminist. They were proud. And so I have memories of Pam in my living room as a child. And she was a lifelong friend and mentor, but when I got elected, a new relationship formed. I'd known Pam my whole life, and suddenly, in theory, I was an equal, but Pam always felt more like a political mother. And I'm sure she felt like that to a number of younger and newer councillors here. And there have been so many tributes to Pam in papers and in the media and in the chamber here. And the lessons of Pam that strike me, that we hear again and again, they're often similar. It's that she was principled and effective. Both, principled and effective. And it speaks to what the mayor spoke of in finding that island, that you could be principled and effective and you could find a way. That you can live your values every day. Pam lived in Regent Park. When the revitalization was coming, she bought in, not just in policy, but in bricks and mortar. She lived her values, and she treated absolutely everybody with respect. Everybody with respect. She lived a good life amongst others. Our acting chief planner, Greg Lintern, who's with us today, sent a note to a number of us at Toronto and East York Community Council shortly after her passing that same afternoon, telling a story of how after her unit in Regent Park was completed, she had the local city planners over for dinner in her unit to show them what a revitalization looks like and to thank them for their part in creating it. That was the type of relationship she had with our city staff. They were equals, our equals. And the legacy that I think she lives with us, countless initiatives, and they've been talked about in Regent Park, certainly in protecting and standing up for the waterfront and others, but most importantly for women in politics, not just here in the city, but through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and around the world. It's that legacy of the selfless politician, of the politician who leads quietly, because sometimes you don't have to lead loudly. And I think the legacy for somebody from her era of that of a tough and determined woman. And so I would just close to the family. You've lost a mother and a grandmother and a wife and a friend, and our condolences to her staff, both our current staff here today and her past staff. We're there for you as city councillors. We are. To her constituents who may be watching, Pam loved you. She loved the people she represented deeply. And I think to all of us, that shocking afternoon on July 7th, who knows when our time may come. But I think if we aspire to live a good life in pursuit of the good at all times, as Pam did, that if we do that, we might rest in peace, as I'm sure Pam is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Unlike Councillor Cressy, our parents weren't always on the same ballot. And this speaks to one of, I think, the most important things that I will hold in my heart about Pam, and that's her generosity. See, in 1997, when the city was amalgamating, Councillors Layton and Councillors McConnell were actually running against one another. And despite that rather fundamental difference of a parting of ways, it didn't take long after for them to find that friendship again and for them to continue to work together. And I think I got to experience this because in my first days and weeks in this building, and Pam was reaching out, her generosity and her kindness was just so clear. She was honestly interested in supporting what it was that I was here to do, and in any way that she could. This generosity and this kindness is shown over and over again, and people across the country know her for that. At the Fed, I've had the opportunity to work with Pam at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for the past 5-6 years, and she is held in such high regard by those mayors and councillors, by the president, by all the vice presidents. They know her for being effective, they know her for being fun, and they know her for being passionate about social justice, in particular poverty reduction. She walks into a room there and the level of respect that she gets is enormous. And she traveled around the world, much to the impacting her health, but to bring that same message, to help improve and increase the number of women in electoral politics. That was a very strong passion of hers. And she traveled around the world empowering women. I think that's something that many of us don't know, just about how much work that was for her. At FCM, she was relentless in her pursuit of them developing a poverty reduction strategy that would put housing and social infrastructure on the top of the national agenda. And she did do that. Since she's taken a more leadership role there, she has consistently been able to position those issues at the top of FCM's agenda. She's strategic. I don't know if many of you who work behind the scenes would know this, but if you didn't, she was pulling strings that you didn't know existed. And she was so good at that, but at the same time so respectful of everyone else's opinion and everyone else's position. And she was able, I think more than many of us, to take off that counselor hat, toss it aside, and put back on that human hat and connect with each of us in their own way. For me, it was talking about trips to JB's in New Smyrna Beach. Our families winter in the same locale. The snowbirds fly to the same vicinity in Florida. And when JB passed away just a couple of years, we shared some memories. We talked about many things when we had the good fortune of going to China together. And she showed just how much excitement and love of life that she had. And that's probably what I'll miss the most. My deepest condolences to the family, her dear staff, who I know that Councillor Cressy mentioned that she loved her constituents, but she was so respectful of her staff and cared about them so very much. And then finally to her community, who I'm sure will miss her greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I simply wanted to follow along the lines of what Councillor Layton was talking about, which is Councillor McConnell's work at FCM. I hope that councillors know, and first of all, it was extraordinary. If you were in town in August, you were at the tribute for Councillor McConnell, but also in attendance were so many members of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And that speaks to Councillor McConnell's impact there for a long time. And I hope that people will appreciate, following on Mayor Tory's comments at the beginning, that I think one of the reasons that Councillor McConnell found intergovernmental affairs at FCM so rewarding is that it is sometimes necessary to leave town to get into a room where you actually do put partisan politics aside. To sit at the head table of FCM, and we always have someone at the head table. That's the way the structure works in deference to our size, and it has been Pam for so long. But at that table, you work with people along every point in the political spectrum. And Pam's role there as the person from Toronto was to make that possible. The New Deal for Cities that was struck with John Godfrey, working with the rural communities, and Pam pulling together all of the executive, that was only possible because of that dedication to setting party lines aside and simply working towards what are our common goals as municipalities in dealing with the federal government. Mayor Tory has asked us on her behalf to begin to do that in this room. And it would be the highest tribute, because that was part of the reason she traveled so extensively. Coming back here and finding that again and again in this council chamber would truly be a gift. Truly a gift and a tribute to Pam, and would be warmly received, I know, by Pam's family. I told Mayor Tory that on the day of Pam's passing, it was a joke at the time, but it's really true. Someone from FCM once asked me, Pam had given just a barn burner speech about something we were trying to develop. And someone turned to me at FCM, a member from Western Canada, and said, what is Pam like as a councillor back home? And I said, well, let me put it to you this way. I held an item in Pam's ward once during the consent agenda. Just the once. You learned when you held an item in Pam's ward that by the time Pam got to this chamber, because everything she did, she built from the ground up through the public service. Didn't see many notices of motion on the back pages from Pam, unless it was to distribute some Section 37. What she brought to council, she brought fully baked, not half baked, not three quarters. It was generally worked so thoroughly through the public service that by the time it got here, it was fully baked. It was not being loaded into the hopper for the first time. And it was something that we could all faithfully get behind, because she had done that work. And if it needed to be spelled out to councillors along any party line, she'd already done that as well, through her team and through her own work. And so if we can remember that that is what made her so effective, I think we can be effective as a council, as a whole. And again, that would be the best tribute ever. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So many things have already been said about Councillor McConnell, our dear friend Pam. And I think that we could probably spend much of the 3 days just, remembering Pam for her legacy, her hard work, her heart. I would like to think that, so much of someone like myself, who was an immigrant child who came to Canada in the 1970s, whose first home was in Regent Park, who attended Spruce Court Public School. I would like to think that perhaps some of the work that Pam has done has been able to make my life better and the life of my family better. And some of that work I can recount, whether it's the heritage programs through the TDSB that actually enabled me to continue to communicate in Cantonese with my parents today, had Pam McConnell fingerprints on it. Some of that work had a lot to do with the student nutrition programs, building a homophobic-free environment and an anti-bullying environment at the school. We become the benefactors of some of that work. And the policy work that was done at that time from the extraordinary visionaries at the Toronto District School Board really set about a foundation of this work that continues today. And at that point in time, it was not given. Those things were certainly not given. You had to fight for it, and you had to change culture. And that, to me, is part of the McConnell legacy. The fact that she was part of this incredible movement of people, early thought leaders, that said that there is a different way to build a city, that the world can look different, and that girls have the same opportunities as boys. That's the McConnell legacy. I have a story that I will share. 2012, we are all new councillors. Well, some of us were new councillors. Some of you folks were here for a while. I went to FCM. It was one of my earlier FCM trips. I hadn't really been on too many FCM conferences. 2012 was that year we were in Saskatoon. It was also the summer of the Eaton Centre shooting. I was watching the screen of televisions in the lobby of this hotel. And I was mesmerized and shocked and just in absolute dismay and horror about what was happening in my community. Counselors came out from their hotel rooms. We were all staring at the screen. It was a horrifying experience, watching thousands of people rush out of the Eden Center because there was so much confusion and we didn't know what was going on. And I think that we were all just watching the screen. And I think that Pam realized that, number one, I'm the local counselor, a new one, no less, just under 2 years in office. And it was also my first major shooting event. And for counselors who have experienced that in their community, you'll know what I'm talking about, your first shooting. And at that national level of attention that came into the neighborhood, everyone was staring at the screen. Pam was looking at me. And she knew what I was going through. The room had melted away, and all there was Pam looking at me. And she said to me, the first one is always, always so difficult. And she knew. She has the ability to sort of take a look at a situation and see the humanity of it all. And she brought that to everything she did. Everything. She was able to sort of see through the clutter, tune out the noise, and get to the core of the issue. She held me in that lobby, and some of you were there. And I didn't have to say much more. She just stroked my back, and that was all she needed to do for me to understand that I was going to be guided through the next few days with Pam by my side, speaking to the chief of police at the time, Bill Blair, and navigating the process of what a political response needed to look like in order to say to your community, everything is going to be okay. It is really tough and it is confusing, and she showed me how to do that. So many things can be said of Pam, so many things, and we could really just spend the next 3 days talking about her and probably still not have enough time. But I will never, ever forget what she has shown myself and to the other extraordinary young women and women that she's mentored. She really cared about us, and she cared about every single one of us. And that's what makes her such a fantastic, not just a politician, but an advocate for justice. And I want to thank Pam's family for sharing her with us. I know it's very difficult when you don't get to see your loved one at the dinner table in a timely fashion. I know that you have to sort of make those sacrifices, but that lesson and that gift was never lost on myself, and I think that for my colleagues here and everybody part of the Toronto Public Service, we are indebted to you for sharing the gift known as Pam, and then to her extraordinary staff who we work side by side. My office is next to Pam's office, and there's not a day that walks by right now that I don't look in the office and I feel her absence. And I know that has to be tough. I know that has to be tough for you as staff. And I know that I see you. I know that I see you continuing to do Pam's work, and I know that you're unwavering in making sure that what she wants done gets done. And for that, I'm grateful as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I too want to start by thanking the family. As councillors, we know we put in a lot of hours, and as Councillor Wong-Tam's just said, we're not often there at the dinner table. Doesn't matter whether you have young children, grandchildren, older adult children. Our families also need us, and it's very difficult sometimes for us to balance that. And I know as a councillor we have to balance that because our family should come first, but believe me, our residents often think they should come first. So it is that balancing act. So for a family of a city councillor, of a politician, life is not always easy. But with a strong family behind us, I personally find that my job is a lot easier. I don't feel guilty if I'm not home for dinner. I don't feel guilty if I can't do something on a Saturday or Sunday because we have events. But I know it's difficult. So thank you for sharing her for so many years. We really appreciated that. To her staff, we should all be thanking you. You have kept your office going. You have helped us as councillors through this summer, keeping us informed and looking after your residents at the same time. So I truly, truly thank you for that. When I was elected in 2010, as Councillor Wantam has said, Pam was always there. She was that mother we could go to. How do you do this? How do you do that? Now, I'm not saying other councillors weren't there as well, but she would. She would just put her arms around you and say, "You okay? You've done okay. You know, we'll work together on this one." So I truly appreciated that. This can be a big, scary, sometimes cold building when you're new, but knowing you have fellow councillors who will help you through the process. And I felt it took about a year to really understand what council was about, and she was always very kind and dedicated to us. I think the first project I actually worked on hand in hand with Pam was when Riverdale Farm and the High Park Zoo and Far Enough Farm were under threat of closing. And she had both Riverdale Farm and Far Enough Farm, and I had High Park Zoo. And we sat together and we said, this is one of the most ridiculous things the City Council is about to vote on. These are spaces across our city where people can go for free. You can go every day of the year if you want to, and it won't cost you anything. And it all comes back to that poverty reduction. We need to have places in our city where people can go, can enjoy. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, doesn't matter who you are. You can go and get away from the city, get away from the world, get away from your troubles. And interaction with animals is really relaxing. But Pam and I work very hard with city staff. And I know some of the city staff may now be a councillor, but we work very hard together to keep those areas open so the whole city can enjoy them for many, many, many more years. So that was the first project I really worked hand in hand with Pam. As Councillor Fletcher says, we love Pam's colours, and that is why we're wearing bright colours today. I used to love looking to see what colour, what outfit she'd be wearing in council. She was always bright, always cheerful. She would stand out in a crowd. And in fact, the flowers there today on her desk, they represent the colours she would wear. I was always amazed at how bright she could find outfits. I don't know where she shopped, but I want that name. Because I truly believe that as a councillor, colour is good. Sorry, gentlemen, your ties are usually brilliant and your shirts can be brilliant. But we have an opportunity to brighten up rooms when we walk in, particularly when you're dealing with difficult issues. So I love to see what Pam was wearing. I won't mention her shoes because I'm sure someone else will mention her shoes. But I admired her so much because she would walk into a room and people would turn and they would smile. She did have respect from everyone. She was a champion of poverty reduction, and when the mayor made her deputy city mayor, I think that was one of the best things, Mr. Mayor, you ever did. There are more, but that's one of them. Pam took that. She traveled our city. She was in every area of our city going through her hand. Exactly. Working out how she could help those people who needed the most help. So I never actually sat on a committee with Pam. Unfortunately, we were always placed on different committees. But by golly, I always met her at one committee every year. And that was budget. She would come and we'd go through the masses of paperwork. City manager, CFO give us masses of paperwork with lots of small print. And Pam would bring out her reading glasses and sometimes a magnifying glass because her eyesight wasn't quite as good. And we would go through line by line by line to make sure we didn't miss anything. Yes, Mr. Rossini's nodding his head. He does small print. We would go through and she would find the areas where we had to make sure that, I'm sorry, you didn't make those cuts. Or if it was a cut, a smaller cut, because we had to look after those residents. So finally, I just want to also mention, we've talked about her being a champion of women coming into politics. She was the woman who brought the Protégé program to us, where women councillors can bring young women in to shadow us, to work in our offices and help with us. I hope that program continues, because it is a fantastic program, and we need to keep it going. We need to encourage more young women to get into politics, not to feel it's just a world of men, nothing personal, men. But when women and men work together, we come at things with different angles, using different sides of our brains, and that's how we make a great city. So I hope that program continues, because I have appreciated the young women who have come into my office to help, and I've learned a lot from them. Probably I've learned more from them than they've actually learned from me. So again, thank you, Pam. Thank you for all you've done for our city. You will not be forgotten, and I guarantee to the family, her memory will live on, and all the work she's done over the years as a school teacher, trustee, and a councillor, we have a far better city for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before coming to council, I was working on a number of anti-poverty initiatives, particularly through Color of Poverty, and had the chance to work with Councillor Pam McConnell many, many times. And I think by nature of her style of doing work, she accepted the term poverty reduction, but I won't call her a poverty reduction activist. She's an anti-poverty activist, and that's what she was. And she wanted to make sure that the poverty is removed from all corners, and she understood the impact of poverty on racialized communities. And I remember seeing her at all of our meetings trying to explain the five-finger strategy that she said, a comprehensive strategy to poverty reduction. And I think we have to figure out a way to continue that legacy, continue that framework of the work that she was doing. And she had the phenomenal amount of respect from activists. You know, activists sometimes do not trust politicians for the right reasons. And I think even when they are progressive, there is still apprehension among activists. But Pam was one of the activists, one of the councillors, the activists had huge amount of respect. But today I rise to pay my respect on behalf of a community that is grieving as well. For the Tamil community, Tamil Canadian community, the area that she represented is very close to them. They settled in that area when they came to this country first. St. Jamestown was home to many, many people, and politicians from that area have a close connection to the community, particularly Pam. And we had an award ceremony right in this room every year, and it's in the 26th year, and it happens in the mid-February, and she makes sure she attends and gives the awards to the recipients. And I remember that, and the family, I'm sure, will remember, because it's during her birthday weekend that it always falls in, because mid-February, and she sacrifices the time that she would have to spend with the family to come and honor the community here for 26 years. And she probably missed one or two, but I think she made it to most of them. And she was here, and the last few years, she has been making speeches about why the council needs to be reflective, why somebody from that audience, where this room looked like entirely Tamil population, she would make those comments to say, we need a Tamil Canadian in this room. And when I got elected last February, within few days was the award ceremony. We both here in the same room celebrated together. Unfortunately, I have not had the privilege to spend more time with her as a councillor colleague, but I will cherish those moments when she advocated for that change. She advocated for that thing, especially in the same place, at the same hall, on behalf of the Tamils Information Award Ceremony. And looking back, it is very, very important for us to kind of, as a community, as a newcomer, refugee community, as somebody who came to this country at the age of 16 as a refugee, to pay that respect to her, because her work is phenomenally important to my being here. So what we are doing as a community is that we are going to be introducing an award, a scholarship to a racialized woman going into politics, taking on a project, either poverty work or a feminist activism work or community development work that the woman would be doing to support that project, but actively support a woman every year to go into politics. And that's the commitment the community has made, and we'll be announcing more details of it soon. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak on behalf of the communities as well as my activist background from anti-poverty to say this, that we will dearly miss her, but legacy is going to live on every corner of this city, every corner of this country. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and good morning. I, too, would like to rise to speak about my friend, our friend, Pam McConnell. I want to first acknowledge the family in the loss of her mom, a grandmother, a wife. Speaker, I've known Pam McConnell for 25 years. First met Pam in 1992. 14 of those years I've served on council with Pam. And I want to read something that a friend of mine who is a professor in the United States has written. And I think it really helps us sum the life and the work of Pam McConnell. It reads as follows: I want my work to resonate in the soul of humanity, cast down inferiorities, mute institutions of power, encapsulate privilege and discrimination, and eradicate racism. This is written by a friend of my family, Cheryl Miller Dice, who is an assistant professor at Eldon University in the United States. Speaker, Pam left a huge footprint that all of us can actually stand on in some capacity, in some space. She did, as been stated before, a lot of work. I've worked with Pam on FCM for 14 years, both on the board and at committee. I was one of the councillors, along with Pam McConnell, and there's a couple of others, who worked hard with respect to fighting to lobby the federal government for the GST rebate, the gas tax. But what I wanted to tell you about this whole process and this experience was Pam served in a leadership role, in a leadership capacity, to try to work with rural Canada, cities and urban areas across the country in order to facilitate the needs of their respective community. Pam was, in fact, at one point my counselor. I lived at Harbourfront, and so I talked with her often about issues. When I became a member of City Council, Pam, like others have stated, came first to me to talk a little bit about the environment, to talk and ask about what my objectives and goals were. We found that we had a sense of commonality because Pam was about fairness. Pam wanted to eradicate racism and poverty. Pam wanted to ensure that in the city, in the area of policing, which I had an active interest in and still do today, that was done properly in the best interest of all, both in terms of the police and the broader community. I recall when the police came in to introduce Taser, and they wanted to do an experiment at Committee Room 1. Pam was having none of it. For those of you who may have been there, you remember, you recall, Pam would not have them do a demonstration on anybody in this building. In fact, she was very strong. The police insisted on it. And all that happened was this very amazing, I always talk to Pam about our height differences and so on. And she stood up, and she was strong, she was tall, and she insisted that while you may do this outside, you will not do it here. And she did it for good reasons. So we've had a lot of talk, Speaker, Pam McConnell and I. We spent a lot of time traveling, and there are some times that Jim would be with us, her husband. We would have a bite or a drink, and the conversation was always about how she could help, how we could make a difference in the lives of many. She did this around the world. My colleagues have stated about her work at FCM. She was very strong with Ukraine. She had a real passion about the Ukraine and the work with respect to women in politics in Ukraine. So it wasn't just Toronto, wasn't just Canada. And I want to speak to the strength of the amazing woman, Pam McConnell. We were in Winnipeg about a year or so ago, and my other colleagues who were with us there for FCM. And Pam had gotten something at that hotel, and I remember seeing her the Saturday morning, and she was coughing, and she said, you know, I picked something up, darn, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to basically battle this. And I don't know whether or not that is part of the cause or just maybe some of the underlying reasons with respect to Pam getting sick. But I can tell you, a week before she passed, and I spoke with her, and she had some issues that she wanted to have addressed for the upcoming council meeting and some of the things that we wanted. And I know there are many other members of council who would receive those calls from Pam just to talk about councillor activities and so on. And she was very strong. She was focused. She wanted to go to Florida. She talked to me about, I'm going to go to Florida, because in the summer months, the family always went to Florida. And that was something that she really, really loved, the ability to spend time with her family there, because it was an opportunity to have dinner and to do all the things that family would do, and she was out of the milieu of the council activities and in the city. But although she was there, she always cared about those in the city of Toronto. And there was one last thing that I wanted just to point out. We had the Ukraine delegation that came in earlier on this year, and we had a lunch for them for economic development. And the lunch was not too far away, but it was far enough that it was a struggle for Pam to walk to the restaurant. But walk she did. She didn't want to take a taxi. She basically wanted to walk with the group to talk about what was actually happening in the Ukraine, to talk about Toronto. When we got to the restaurant, you can see that she was very tired, and it was impacting her. And in a nanosecond, she sat down and she basically started to talk about what we all needed to do, how we needed to help Ukraine, and the relationship between FCM and our work as members of City Council. And so I take that with respect to her strength, not only of character, of compassion, but her focus in wanting to get things done. We've seen it here. We've heard her talk about poverty eradication and other things that Pam has basically done. She has actually left a great big footprint for all of us to stand on. And I know I have had the opportunity of meeting this amazing lady, that I will actually, as the mayor has stated and others have stated, try to live up to that ideal and the examples that she has set for us all. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Speaker. When I think of Pam McConnell, I think of two words: empathy and tenacity. Pam had an incredible commitment to listening to those with lived experience, and had a depth of empathy that we can all learn from in all of the things we do here at the city. She never forgot her working class roots, and she worked tirelessly to make sure that the voices of those who aren't normally heard were heard. And Pam did have an uncanny ability to find the island, but there was never any doubt who she was paddling with and who she was paddling for. Pam, whether it was the poverty reduction strategy or any other work we did here, was always on the side of the people who needed the support of councillors and the city. Whether it was contracting out of cleaning services for police, she stood up for those cleaners. Whether it was the taxi reform, she was there fighting for taxi drivers. Whether it was the poverty reduction strategy, she was fighting for families and children in particular who are experiencing the incredible crushing nature of embedded poverty. And she went out, as everyone has said, to listen to people and the lived experience they had, because that makes us better representatives. And she fought hard, particularly for mothers and children, as I said. The first time that I worked with Pam was at the school board. And she and Fiona Nelson and Irene Atkinson were incredible leaders who created a policy at the Toronto School Board to make sure every single school had childcare and that mothers had an opportunity to go to work and be mothers. And she was leading with many other feminists at that time to say, yes, we can do both. We can be active participants and work and have real effective roles in the economy and in our society, but we needed childcare. And so she was leading that fight at that time. And we all know she loved babies, and in particular, she loved her grandchildren. We heard about them at every single lunch, almost every conversation about what was happening with her grandchildren. She loved them very, very deeply. And she seemed to love all the children of the city. And I've been thinking, we're looking at ways to remember her, that maybe we should form a Grandmothers for Childcare. Or, except it probably would be called Abuelas for Childcare, Boobies for Childcare, Nonas for Childcare, Duddies for Childcare. It would have to have a long name to make sure that it was inclusive and that it represented all areas of the city. And I'm going to figure out how to do this one day. Maybe it'd just be Nanas for childcare, because Pam was Nana. And we will remember as well, as I said, her tenacity. And it is up to us now to be as tenacious as we can be to make sure that we carry on with her legacy. And to Pam's family, for those of us who have experienced losses like this that are shocking and deep, and you are in pain, time will heal. It will. And but you have to hold us to account too. So you don't forget us, please, and make sure that we do carry on Pam's work. So, as I said, I know that as time passes, it will be easier, but we will never forget Pam here, and I know you will not either. My deepest condolences to you and your family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Davis, I'm in for nanny daycare.
Yes.
Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. To Jim, Pam's family, Pam's friends and staff who are here, and also with thanks to you, Speaker and Mr. Mayor, for giving us this time to talk about Pam and therefore to talk about the best we can be in this role as elected officials. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the island that Pam always sought and would gently and sometimes not so gently shepherd us to. And I think it's important to remember that it wasn't just us or the professional public service that Pam felt had to be able to reach the island. I had a consultation with her in South Parkdale as part of the development of the poverty reduction strategy. And Pam had given clear instructions to the city staff who were running it that it was to be an event where the voices we were listening to were people who had lived experience of poverty. And an extra effort was made to provide transit fare and food and to make sure the invitations went out so that people with lived experience could tell us what we needed to do rather than the other way around, which is, frankly, a mistake we make too often. What the amazing thing was is in my own neighborhood, Pam actually knew just about every single person who was in that room that day, including Bonnie Briggs, who we also lost this summer. And she moved around table to table and sat and made a point of listening to people like Bonnie or others who are normally excluded from these conversations to find out what they felt was needed to end poverty in the city of Toronto. She also made an effort to make sure that those who raised their voices to fight back against problems, not in this forum, but as activists, are also included. I mentioned to some of you, there was a time in this chamber, I think a few of you were here, when some activists were disrupting a debate on Kirkland Lake. And the police were in the process of removing us. We kind of deserved it. And Pam made a point of coming over and linking arms with those of us who were being arrested by the police and escorted out of the building. She believed deeply that it is not in this chamber where we build the island, but in the broader community. And that could produce astonishing, miraculous results. The island isn't worth it just for its own sake, it's worth it for the results. One of the most surprising things that ever happened to me, given the story I just told, is that Pam dragged me out one time to a graduating ceremony for a class the police were holding. And the reason she took me, she was, I think at the time, the vice chair of the police services, is that she had been working for years to have the police service better represent the community that they police. And this graduating class was, for the very first time, one where a majority of the people becoming police officers were women and people from racialized groups, a majority of them. That was because of Pam's work. That was because of her ability to bring institutions, members of the activist community, members of this chamber, and all the voices in the conversation together to build a real island, to build real change, to build real inclusion in the city of Toronto. Pam represented the best of what we can do as elected officials, and Mr. Mayor, I will take up your challenge to try to better represent that in my participation here in this council. Thank you again, Jim and the family.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I too want to just simply say goodbye to a colleague and friend, Councillor Pam McConnell. I admired Pam McConnell. It wasn't always so. I didn't always admire her, but I came to admire Pam. I first got to know Pam a little bit from afar. And then, obviously, the 10 or 11 years that we spent working together here at City Council. I was at the province in the early 90s, and I got to know Pam from Queen's Park, and I have to tell you, even back then, she was a tough woman. It didn't matter what the issue of the day was, whether it was Sunday shopping, casinos, property tax reform, same-sex spousal benefits. We were dealing back then provincially with a series of very, very difficult, tough issues, social issues in a bad economy. And I got to tell you, there was a team of people down here at City Hall who were relentless. They were tough, they were dogged, they were capable. And Pam was one of the ringleaders of that. And I have to tell you, you remember some of the names, and you remember them not because of history but you remember them because of specific things that they did. And they had a wonderful team down here, and I remember a few of those folks. And Pam was one of those. There was Pam, and there was Jack, and there was Dan, and there was Kyle, and a number of others. And I didn't have a whole lot of admiration for them then, but when I got here to City Hall and I got to see Pam up close and I got to work with her some, she was a link for us. She was one of the last links for us to a time gone by, to an era where where this city was struggling to be better than it could be. And it was because of people like Pam that we were successful in that effort. You know, she wasn't afraid to take controversial positions. She wasn't afraid to be at the forefront of an issue that wasn't popular with Torontonians, that wasn't popular with a whole lot of people, but because she believed that it was the right thing to do. And in that regard, she was the kind of representative that I know that many of us would like to be like. And that's one of the reasons why I came to admire Pam. And watching her and that team of people that she worked with down here, as you move around the city of Toronto, you see the city that she worked to build in its urban form. You see it everywhere. You see it in the social infrastructure of the city. Any supports that people have here, Pam McConnell was at the center of that fight to create that support. That's why when we all look over and you say, wow, we lost someone that was bigger than life, larger than life. And that's why I came to admire Pam McConnell. I believe that Toronto will miss Pam. I believe that the City Council will ultimately miss Pam, and I will certainly miss Pam.
Thank you. Councillor Bala.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too want to give my condolences to the family, and a lot has been said, but being what I believe the last speaker to speak about Pam, I just want to reflect and say that I think she left enough seeds out there. She empowered enough people out there that a lot of what she believes is going to continue to be fought for. And I think that it's a big, big part of her legacy. She fought for the files, she led some files, but then she went quiet in empowering all kinds of different people to be part of the conversation, to lead other files. And that is something that cannot be just a sideline, because I know I felt it firsthand. Like some of my colleagues have mentioned here, in 2010, a lot of people were elected for the first time. And even before we came into this chamber, we got all the women councillors got called to Pam's house for a dinner, just to make everybody feel comfortable, just to make other women councillors feel comfortable and to say, you know what, there's some support in here. And then in 2012, when the mass sale of the scattered homes got to be in front of us, Pam called me to her office, and I'm like shaking. What does Pam want? And she looked at me and she said, you know, we're going to have to stop this. I'm like, absolutely. And you're going to lead it. And I was speechless. And she's like, we're right there beside you. We're right there along with you. And for somebody that had just gotten here, like 1 or 2 years, it's that feeling that my colleagues explained, that somebody understands, that is somebody's like giving you that little push, that somebody is empowering for that first time you take that leadership step. And that was Pam, and that is so, so important. And I know that for many of us here, and I certainly feel it in the housing file, she was a sounding board. She, with all the respect to my colleagues, she would be the first person I would walk into her office and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this plan? And when this spring, I called her up and I said, you know, can you be the vice chair at the affordable housing? And she texts back and she said, it would be an honor. We get shit done together. And that was her stuff. She wanted to get stuff done in this place. It was not about how much time it was going to take. It was not about how you were going to get there. It was about getting it done. And we're certainly all going to miss that. And even in July, Tuesday morning before council meeting, she was already very, very sick. I get a call from Pam, and she says, how's that tenants first thing? Like, it should be okay, because if you don't have enough votes, I'm going to go down there. I'm like, I think we're going to be fine, Pam. And she's watching it on TV, and then there was a few other items that we had to pass for an award, and she's texting me back at the end of the day saying thank you. And she's there until the end because she truly believes in these things from everything that we've been working on. So I just know that a lot of us in this chamber feel like we have her strength, her enthusiasm to carry on with many of these files, but our sounding board will be truly missed, but we'll carry on.
Thank you. Now I would like to call for a 10-minute recess so members of council can personally give condolences to the family, and then we'll start our council meeting. Okay. Members of council, if I can please have you take your seats. Members of council, please. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge, welcome the grade 5 students from Wilkinson Junior Public School located in Ward 29. Their local counselor is Mary Fragadakis, and their group leader is Susan Jim. Welcome. So before we continue, I would just like to acknowledge the mayor.
Well, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to ask that we arise once again this morning to have a moment of silence to acknowledge the loss of life and the injury suffered in Las Vegas in the past 24 hours, and to symbolize through a moment of silence the condolences that we extend to the friends and family of those directly involved, and to all of the people of Las Vegas. We don't know much about what happened as yet in terms of the background, but whatever happened, it's an unreal, an unspeakable tragedy for everybody to see that sort of thing go on. And so I wanted to ask us to do that, and at the same time, during the same moment of silence, I hope it will also serve as a moment during which we can reflect on the events that took place, the act of terror that was perpetrated in Edmonton, the city of Edmonton in Canada, this past weekend. Again, we would do that in the hopes that the injured are recovering, and we would also extend our thanks to the first responders who seem in the city of Edmonton, as they do here so often, to have responded in a heroic and incredibly competent way to prevent a bad situation from getting even worse. And I hope as well that our moment of silence will remind all of us of the need to stand firm, to continue to stand firm every single day against hate and violence, and to stand firm against those who would seek to divide us, sometimes even in the wake of these senseless acts. So I would just ask that we would do that, Madam Speaker, just to acknowledge those two very sad events.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and home to many diverse Indigenous peoples. For the benefit of those who are connected to the internet, the City Clerk has posted all the agenda materials for today's meeting at toronto.ca/council. Councillor Campbell, you have a brief announcement.
I have a bit of a happy announcement. I'm pleased to introduce a young member, actually not of my ward, but of Councillor Holliday's ward, Ms. Taylor Franks, who attends the Karen Kane School of the Arts, which is in Councillor DiCiano's ward. Taylor Franks is a competitive downhill racer and a long-distance runner. She joins us today as a successful bidder in a charity auction to help raise and improve the local playground at Rosethorn Park, where she attended school. Taylor is here to see what it's like to be counselor for a day. So I'd just like to welcome Taylor. There she is there. Okay.
Welcome.
Can you come and get a picture?
Councillor Grimes, you have an announcement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to welcome the second-year students of the Bachelor of Journalism program at Humber College this morning. They're here with us this morning. And they're here with their professor, Michael Carpita, and I'm understanding they're going to be doing an essay or a paper on what they've learned here today. So welcome, Humber College, Tobago Lakeshore campus this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call for a motion to confirm the minutes. Councillor Holliday, you have a motion on the minutes from the last meeting.
I do, Madam Speaker, that City Council confirm the minutes of Council from the regular meeting held on July 4, 5, 6, and 7, 2017 in the form supplied to the members.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Members of Council, we have the following administrative inquiry from Councillor James Pasternak before us today. Administrative Inquiry 32.1 on hate-sponsored rallies such as Al Quds Day. The City Manager advises that information in response to this inquiry is not yet available, but should be available for the November Council meeting. I would propose that this matter be deferred until the next meeting to permit the City Manager to submit an answer to this inquiry. May I have a motion to defer this inquiry to the next meeting? Councillor Pasternak, you move it?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I've been advised that more time is needed, and I'd be happy to move deferral.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Members, we also have the following three administrative inquiries from Councillor Ainsley before us today. Administrative Inquiry 32.2 on Transportation Services, Cycling Infrastructure and Programs, Open Data Transportation Services. Administrative Inquiry 32.3 on Transportation Services, Cycling Infrastructure and Programs, Open Data, Bike Share Ridership. And Administrative Inquiry 32.4 on Toronto Parking Authority, Open Data. The answers to these inquiries were distributed with your supplementary materials last week. May I have a motion to receive these inquiries and answers for information? Councillor Ainsley?
Hi, good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning to everybody. I have three separate motions on these items to refer each one to the Executive Committee.
Okay. So we'll do that, sir. We'll take it all together. All in favor? Carry. Thank you. I will now call upon the committee chairs to introduce their reports. The chairs can speak about the reports for up to 5 minutes. Mayor Tory, you have a motion to introduce the Executive Committee report.
I do, Madam Speaker, and I would move that report from meeting 27 of the Executive Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. It was a long agenda, Madam Speaker, and which we heard from many members of the public as well, and from members of the Council who were visitors at the Executive Committee meeting. And I'll just touch on a couple of the matters. First of all, the Executive Committee has recommended to this Council the approval of the ravine strategy. And I think this is actually a very important initiative that's been ongoing for some time now, and there have been various things over time that have dealt with this in a kind of a piecemeal way, and I don't say that in any critical way, but I think now we have in front of us a comprehensive strategy that will, as a result of the work of a lot of people, both councillors and public servants, address some of the needs of what are the backyards of many people, if not all of the people of the City of Toronto. They're a treasure that I don't think are fully appreciated in the context of what other cities don't have, and we do. And they're also a place where there has been invested, for right or for wrong, but there's been invested over time billions of dollars of infrastructure, from roads to pipelines. And so it's important that the pillars of that strategy, which include protecting, includes access, includes investing, and a host of other things, especially in the anticipation of climate change and the kinds of weather changes we're seeing, be addressed so that we can make sure we take account of the stresses that we placed on the system, but also at the same time make these assets, these precious assets, more available to more people. What is proposed here is something that I hope we'll continue to do on a number of areas across the city, which is an interdivisional structure for managing this so that we don't have the kind of silo approach that often stands in the way of getting things done. And really this report, I think, will be something that will be work for decades in terms of the management of the ravines, the protection of the ravines, the balanced use of and enjoyment of the ravines such that they can go on forever. We dealt as well, Madam Speaker, with a number of housing items, two of which demonstrate a strong partnership with the Ontario government, and I'm gratified at the fact that we've had those examples of partnership arise since we last met. And I think it underscores the ability we do have, if we stand up and stand firm and advocate strongly, as we've done as a group together, to make sure we can work with the other governments to actually get things done for the people we all represent. The first item is a unique item, I think, in that it represents an opportunity for us to work with the Ontario government on the leverage of some lands that they own. And as you know, we took the first leadership on this as a city council and as a city in putting up some of our land to make it available for affordable housing, and those projects are moving forward with more pieces of land that are owned by the city to come. But what we had also done at the same time is ask the other levels of government to do the same, to scour their own lists of inventories of surplus land and see what they might make available to us to work together to provide for more affordable housing. And this was a request that I made and that we made as a council to them, and I'm gratified that they responded, for example, with the freeing up of 8 acres of land in the West Don lands and an acre of land at 27 Grosvenor, 26 Grenville Streets, and 30% of the residential gross floor area in these sites will be allocated to affordable rental housing, and you will be asked at this meeting to approve and to fund up to 600 new, much-needed affordable rental homes. The second item, which is not unrelated at all, is requesting Council to authorize the City to take part in the Home for Good supportive housing initiative. And this is another instance in which I and you and all of us together had asked the province to step forward and do more by way of supportive and wraparound answers for people who, in particular, have particular homelessness issues often contributed to by mental health and addiction and other kinds of things that contribute to chronic homelessness. And this is much needed support that the province has now given to us on a 3-year basis. And the good news is that the results will come in weeks and months, not years, because they have imposed a timetable on us that says they want to put this money to work right away, and Councillor Bailão is hard at work already making sure that that is the case. And this will make a real difference to 2,000 people in our city. And again, it's not enough, but it's a great start for a group of people within the community that have very special needs for support. And again, we're doing it together with the other governments. I will also just say that I'm gratified at the fact that the committee considered, and we've come forward to you, recommending the Council's approval of 7 more development proposals representing an opportunity to do hundreds more affordable housing units. This is something that Councillor Bailão has been on top of, and I thank her for her leadership on this file. We are making progress on the housing, more progress than has been made for quite a long time. I'm gratified by that because it's needed. It's what people expect us to do here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Mihevc, you have a motion to introduce the Board of Health report.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll move that the report of meeting 21 of the Board of Health listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. Madam Speaker, I think the key item there, it really is only a very small motion. It's part of a larger package of issues dealing with the overdose crisis that is hitting not just Toronto, not just Ontario or Canada, but frankly, jurisdictions around the world. It has been quite the summer, starting out with a number of well-publicized overdoses. And I think just at this point, the key piece that I want to just say or do a shout out is to the community of advocates and activists that serve in our social service agencies that are frontline workers with people who are struggling with drug addictions and are needing all kinds of support given the bad product, the bad drugs that are out there laced with fentanyl that are causing overdoses in numbers that are just absolutely astounding. Many of them have assembled around Moss Park, and they have really challenged our political, social, ethical imaginations to rethink our drug strategy. So thanks to them, a shout out to them, a shout out to our public health staff that have also consumed a lot of this summer working on it, to the staffs in the Mayor's office, in Councillor Cressy's office, Councillor Wong Tam's office, my office that have also worked very hard on this, and of course to the Mayor, to Councillor Wong Tam, to Councillor Cressy as the Chair of the Drug Strategy Committee for the political leadership in trying to think about overdose and drug policy in a different kind of way. We are learning a lot. And as police officers are saying to us, we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. We have to think about a public health approach that makes sense. What makes sense is something that requires a lot of thought and careful consideration. We've learned a lot about addictions. We're learning a lot about addictions and about drug policy and where it can work, where it needs to be changed, and how the future has to be different than the past. The war on drugs has not worked for 30 years, so we need a different kind of approach. And I think one of the other things that we've learned is the amount of stigma that we really have to find a way to have this conversation in a way that does not stigmatize the users of drugs. So there's a lot that public health is doing. We have a little piece of it here on Council's agenda that I think is pretty well straightforward. But my encouragement to folks, not at this meeting, but in the months and frankly years to come, is that I think all of us as kind of community leaders need to seize ourselves of this issue and help our communities have the conversations necessary to move us in a good direction. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Pasternak, you have a motion to introduce the Community Development and Recreation Committee report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. The report for meeting 22 of the Community Development and Recreation Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. I would like to start off by congratulating staff for successful application to the Province of Ontario Strategy and Human Trafficking. I'd like to particularly thank the staff from Social Development and Finance Administration, the Affordable Housing Office and Shelter Support and Housing, and of course, Police Service and Covenant House. In particular, I'd like to thank Phoenicia Luce Dowland, Sean Gadden, and Bruce Rivers from Covenant House, who all contributed to a successful application and a strong announcement by the Province of Ontario last week, which I had the honor of attending. As Toronto becomes a destination for newcomers worldwide, and as it continues to flex its muscle as a sanctuary city, it is important that we keep our eye on the tragic consequences of human trafficking and have the resources, funds, and programming to fight it in every way possible. It is often an unreported crime. It occurs in businesses, it occurs in various neighborhoods, and it is important that this funding be used in its best way possible. Thank the provincial government and, of course, our city staff for their successful application. I also bring to your attention on the agenda coming forward the City of Toronto Sport Plan, the Ontario Early Years Child and Family Centres Planning and Implementation update, and, of course, the expansion of the Indigenous-led early years programs and services. These are all vital issues that I look forward to discussing in the days ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, you have a motion to introduce the Economic Development Committee report.
Yes, I do, Speaker. That the report from meeting 23 of Economic Development Committee listed on the agenda for Council be presented for consideration. Speaker, we had a number of presentation at committee. I want to thank the GTAA as well as Toronto Global. The items that are actually here on the agenda are two specific ones that I wanted just to speak to. The first, Speaker, is the Hempson report, which members will have that report here. It's about the film studio development. It talks about the Portlands and also the South and East Employment District in the area. You know that this year was a record-setting year, or last year was a record-setting year for us in the film and television production facility in the City of Toronto. In excess of $2 billion was generated, and that is a first for the city. The city continues to strive in its effort, and led by the mayor, meetings in Los Angeles and conversation with the film sector here, which employs some 25,000 men and women who are absolutely regarded around the world as being leaders in their craft and their ability to produce film and television and other digital work. We are at a crisis. We are facing challenges as it relates to space where production can be made in the city. The studios that we have now, most of them are basically fully exhausted in terms of at capacity. This report seeks to address some of these issues. I want to encourage members to read this document. It's extremely important. I note that later on, the chair of the film board, Councillor Fletcher, will speak to this matter because it's being held, but I just wanted to lend my voice to this issue. The other thing that, or the item that came to committee, Speaker, that I wanted just to draw our attention to. October is Workforce Development Month, and I know that Patricia Wolcott, our General Manager, is here, and her team. They are embarking on the 6th year of this great event in the City of Toronto. And the Mayor just last week kicked off the event, and there are over 300 plus job opportunities that are available to some of the retailers that have been involved. I know that the event was kicked off at Yorkdale, and at Yorkdale right now there's a demand for workers, and so for those who are looking for jobs, there are great opportunities and so on. Workforce Development Month is really an opportunity to shine the spotlight on the many partnership and city engagement with community organizations, private employers, and of course our divisions within the city government and so on. This is, in fact, a collaboration of all the essential ingredients that one needs to be successful. And the team led by Ms. Wolcott has been working diligently to address and arrest unemployment in the City of Toronto. The importance of this month is that as members of council, we want to drive the attention of our respective residents who are looking for opportunities to go to the varying website and so on, and I would advise that there is a conversation that's taking place online throughout the year, and it's at hashtag #WorkOneToronto. So when they're promoting activities in the city, and or members actually need to be able to inform their residents, I would encourage them to speak with staff. Thank the staff for the great work. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsley, you have a motion to introduce the Government Management Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning to everybody. I'd like to move the following motion that the report from meeting 22 of the Government Management Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. Saying that, I just want to speak briefly. Since Government Management last met in May, and we have very exciting meetings. I wish more of our colleagues came to the Government Management to learn what the city was doing. Councillor Davis can speak to that. We trust you. That's what I like to hear. But city staff that report to the Government Management Committee in many different areas work very hard and diligently to make sure that the work is a success and it reflects well in the City of Toronto. And I just wanted to point out a few of our staff that have received awards since last May. I want to start by congratulating the City Treasurer, Mike St. Amant, as he received the Municipal Finance Officers Association of Ontario Excellence in Municipal Finance Award for the year 2017. 2017 has seen the City of Toronto win several awards for excellence in digital technology innovation and support of key city programs. The Vehicle for Hire legislation, which was a collaborative initiative between the Municipal Licensing and Standards and our IT department, which provides a full digital solution for legislation and drives business transformation, has actually won 3 awards this year. The 2017 Excellence in Municipal Systems Award, the 2017 Digital Transformation Award, the 2017 City of Toronto Managers Award of Excellence. The city's Making Registration Betters program, which was a collaborative effort between the IT department and Parks, Forestry and Information, won a 2017 City of Toronto Manager Award of Excellence in the category of Customer Experience. the city's enterprise geospatial environment, which was an initiative of the city's IT department, also won the 2017 Excellence in Municipal Systems Award from the MISA. The city also was presented with an Open Cities Index Award for the Public Sector Digest and Canada's Open Data Exchange for being one of the top 3 ranked municipalities in Canada for the year 2016. These awards demonstrate innovation and continued effort to modernize city services, and I want to thank all of the staff that were involved in these programs. And last but not least, I wanted to acknowledge Rob Rossini, our outgoing CFO. Rob sat beside me for the past 5 years as I've chaired the Government Management Committee. One of the highlights of my career the last term, former Mayor Ford had me chair the corporate nominating panel that hired Mr. Rossini. The only difference we've really had since that time was I thought I was hiring Rob for 10 years. Somewhere along the line, he said he was staying for 5 years. I specifically remember saying, "Glenn, I'm going to look forward to have you for 10 years. He seemed to think that I said, looking forward to tenure. But anyway, Rob's done an amazing job for the past 5 years. We had a great send-off for him last Thursday night. I want to welcome, it was a great time. I met a number of his family, and I thank them for the support. It's not always easy being the CFO in this city. There's a lot of demand put on not only your professional life, but your personal life. And I want to thank Mr. Rossini for all your hard work and dedication. And I hope you have a long, happy, successful retirement.
Thank you. Well, we do have something planned for tomorrow for the official. So
we're double counting.
Councillor Palacio, you have a motion to introduce the Licensing and Standards Committee report?
Yes, I do, Madam Speaker. That the report from meeting 21 of the Licensing Standards Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. I'm going to be very brief with a couple items that we had at the Licensing Standards. The first one is the tow truck industry review, and there is an additional report that I'll be asking members of council to look at it. And the second one is the Zero Toronto Recreation for Cannabis. And on that one, first and foremost, I want to thank city staff for the tremendous amount of work that they have done and throughout the last few months. As you may know, on April the 13th, 2017, the federal government introduced legislation to legalize and regulate marijuana. Now, and that's under Bill C-45, and that's the Cannabis Act. Under the proposed rules, the federal government will regulate marijuana production, and the provincial government will regulate the cannabis distribution and retail sales. Now, on September the 8th of 2017, the provincial government announced the framework for the marijuana legalization. And within some of the key points that were introduced, the province is it's looking at having a centralized, provincially operated retail model that to be a subsidiary of the LCBO that sells for the sale of cannabis. Now, this report builds on and complements as well the recommendations adopted by the Board of Health and the interdivisional work done by our city staff, and that's the working group. And they have done an amazing work within those lines. So this report supports the province plan to sell cannabis through this provincially operated retail model. Now, if this model goes ahead, that will allow the province to closely oversee the operation of retailers and ensure that they operate in a responsible and also in an accountable manner to uphold public health and safety, which is the key aspect within that. And also, that will reduce the local impacts that will require extensive municipal oversight and enforcement. And we have to be very mindful about that, because that's going to cost us a lot of money, and the question is who's going to pay for it. Now, through the deputations at the Licensing Standards Committee, we heard loud and clear that what the federal government has done is to create a tremendous level of expectancy in terms of decriminalizing the substance and legalizing it at the same time. So there is some concerns floating around, and I believe that would be paramount and essential for this council to send a strong, concise, and ambiguous message to the feds. And some of the concerns that have been shared with us is that establishing heavy penalties for the sale of marijuana outside the legal framework. Also, that for the feds to consult with the city and the province when developing the regulations for home cultivation of cannabis. So that's when people will be allowed to grow their plants within their own units. So the question there, and those are concerns from city staff as well, who is going to enforce it, how that's going to be done. And so that's one of the serious concerns in terms of accessibility to the substance to minors as well, and perhaps the unregulated aspect of allowing that within small units and apartment buildings, condominiums, and houses where we have multiple dwelling units and so on. So, Madam Speaker and members of council, I think it is important also to send a strong message to the recreational dispensaries that until the national strategy and the provincial legislation is enacted, recreational dispensaries cannot open and operate wherever they please. After all, yes, we do have zoning bylaws, we do have regulations in place, and people should be a little bit more mindful about that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon, you have a motion to introduce the Parks and Environment Committee report.
I actually do, and it will be brief. Good morning, everyone. Colleagues, great to see you all again. That the report from meeting 21 of the Parks and Environment Committee listed on the agenda of Council will be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Now that was brief. Councillor Shiner, you have a motion to introduce the Planning and Growth Management Committee report.
I do, Madam Speaker, that the report from meeting 22 of the Planning and Growth Management Committee listed on the agenda of the Council be presented for consideration. In doing that, I would first like, with all of my colleagues, to remind you and welcome Mr. Greg Lintern as our acting chief planner. Since he's got that appointment a few weeks ago and officially started the first of the month, I think he's been happy and sad as many times. But I would encourage you now, if you can, to direct the inquiries that you've had in the past, and many of them, over to our deputy city manager, also to direct them to Greg directly. I can tell you in the short time he's been there, he's already reached out. He's come to a number of different meetings. He's tried to work on some of the issues that are there, and he's been very approachable. So I think we may be able to see a big difference in the way that we do things, and thank Greg for his work, and hopefully he won't end up as our previous male chief planners with gray hair in the matter of the 6 months and on that he may be here, because I've noticed that recently when I've been talking with them. I'd also like to bring to your attention, as I do at every meeting, the number of affordable housing units that we've got on this agenda. In total, there's 1,303 units being approved or refused, and there's no affordable housing units. None. There are the two, the Open Door program and the West Don lands, but from all the development applications, there's none. So what I'd have to do is reach out back to you to say on those applications that you're working with and they're going through council, do reach out to the planning staff and back to the applicants because when you ask them and you work with our housing office, it's amazing the fact that we can actually get affordable housing units in many of those projects. But it's up to you very much to reach out and make sure that they're being asked for, as I have in some of the applications I have, and found that people that and the developers that are there, when they understand the program, are willing to help with us. We also have in front of us some TO Core. TO Core is an extremely important official plan amendment. Started in 2014 because we had already lost the ability to stay up and keep up with the infrastructure that was needed for the redevelopment of the core of the city, which many of us in our community still depend upon and come down to every day. We're behind. We're very much behind. We're seeing that in the fact that the infrastructure isn't there, and now this report, which staff have worked on, and Greg's now brought it to us in council, is a very important initiative going forward to try and fix that and give some direction, as they're saying, for the next 25 years. But as I see it, probably a lot less cycle. We'll have to look at it again sooner than that because of the intensity of the development that's in the downtown core. But it's a tremendous amount of work. It's a great vision. I suggest that those of you outside of the core, along with those in the core, take a good look at this because it's some great work that our staff are doing. As well, we have an item that was up for a little bit of discussion at our committee, the inclusion of the City of Toronto Heritage Register on Midtown and Focus, where we listed a number of properties to try and make sure that what happened to the Bank of Montreal building on Yonge Street didn't happen in other areas because at least they were listed. There is a question, and it was at the committee, as to what happens and are these designated buildings and are they being tied up and can we develop around these areas? And I met twice with industry people, once during the morning of the meeting in my office because we had to wait for quorum, and a second time with Greg there, members of the Build, some landowners, and the heritage staff, and had a great discussion around it. And there is a supplementary report that's coming that they're still working on that will detail the way it's going forward. But I think it's necessary to have some common ground to understand what you can do with buildings that might be heritage, and the bulk listing process was one. Please take a look at the report that comes out, and we'll see if it resolves the issues that are for you. So, in general, it's not a lot that you see in the number of items, but some very important items there, and I look forward to any of your questions or comments you may have during this council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you have a motion to introduce the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee report.
Thank you, Speaker, that the report from meeting 23 of the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes, you have a motion to introduce the Etobicoke York Community Council report.
I do, Madam Speaker, that the report from meeting 24 of the Etobicoke York Community Council list on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. And just before I sit down, Madam Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the organizers, the volunteers, the Invictus Games that we had over the last couple of weeks. It was amazing. I got a chance to talk to some of the athletes from Team Canada, and they were blown away by how they got treated in Toronto. But I want to thank all the city staff that worked on to make great games for the Invictus Games. It was truly amazing, and I just want to take that opportunity to thank our city staff for putting the great work in to make it so welcoming to all the teams from all over the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Also, Councillor Grimes, I believe congratulations is in order for you. Your son got married over the weekend.
We're not invited, eh?
We weren't invited, no. Now, Councillor Grimes will be supporting the nanny camp.
Oh, the granny there.
Councillor Ojameri, you have a motion to introduce the North York Community Council report.
Thank you. Excuse me. That the report from meeting 24 of the North York Community Council listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, if I can please have some quiet in the council chambers from members of council, please. Okay. Councillor Lee, you have a motion to introduce the Scarborough Community Council report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
that the report from meeting 24 of the Scarborough Community Council listed on the agenda of council be presented for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam, you have a motion to introduce the Toronto and East York Community Council report.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I do. That the report from meeting 26 of the Toronto and East Shore Community Council listed on the agenda of council be presented for consideration. And of course, with that, we'd like to thank our exceptional clerk staff who helped us shepherd through 145 items that community council meeting, which I understand is now a record for Toronto East Shore Community Council. And also to highlight, Madam Speaker, is that it's a much greater percentage of items on the agenda of Toronto East Shore Community Council than what we see in our neighboring community councils, and it just should be highlighted that Scarborough Community Council did 17% of the work that we had at Toronto East Shore Community Council. North York did 34%, and Etobicoke York did 37%. And Madam Speaker, the reason I bring that up is I think it's just very important for us to acknowledge realistically the volume of information and work that is done in the downtown, midtown area. And also, if I can just take a moment, just a very quick moment, Madam Speaker, I just wanted, because we're going to be breaking for lunch soon, I want to just remind members of council and the colleagues here that the University of Toronto has invited us to meet them in committee room number 2 during the lunch break, and this is to witness the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Toronto and the University of Toronto. All members of council are invited to attend. The mayor will be there to deliver some remarks, as well as the city manager, and the signing is actually at 1 o'clock, and members of the media and the public are welcome to attend to hear some of those brief remarks, and that's at committee room 2 today, and this is actually a historic signing, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, the other community councils may have less items on the agenda, but we have long items and important items on the agenda that make a difference. So it's not the number, it's the quality. Councillor Crawford, you have a motion to introduce the new business from the mayor and city officials.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move that the new business from city officials listed on the agenda of council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motions, recorded vote.
Councillor Bailao, please. Thank you.
Councillor Fragedakis and Councillor Cole, please.
The motions to introduce the reports carries unanimously, 41 in favor.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Now, at this point, I believe Councillor Matlow, you want to make a comment.
In fact, thank you, Madam Speaker. In fact, it's a point of privilege. And I'm just going to read it out as was written, just so you understand why I'm rising on a point of privilege rather than a declaration of interest. And this is based on advice I sought from the Integrity Commissioner. So she wrote to me, I suggest that you rise on a point of personal privilege, not at the declaration of interest portion of the agenda, to state the following. I rise on a point of personal privilege. I have consulted with the Integrity Commissioner in relation to item LS 20.1, prohibited animal review. I have been advised that in consideration of the principles of the Code of Conduct, I should not participate in the debate and vote on item LS 20.1 item because my spouse works for an organization that has taken a position on the outcome and participated in the city staff consultation. The difference, of course, is that this is not technically, or this is not a pecuniary interest, but certainly it could be inferred as that I might have a bias, and therefore I think the right thing to do is to recuse myself from this vote.
Thank you. Well, it's not a motion, it's just a point of personal privilege. Yeah, it's not debatable. Okay, Councillor Matlow, you want to circulate that comment from, yeah? Yeah. Okay, can you circulate it for some members of council? Okay, we'll go to, I've asked the council, are there any declarations of interest? Please indicate the committee, the item or motion number, and the nature of interest. So we have Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker, I would declare an interest on CD 22.9, Lawrence Heights, Phase 1B Service Management Consent, as my father owns a property in the immediate area, and I've declared interest on everything else that's happened in Lawrence Heights since it's come to council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In an abundance of caution, I'd like to declare an interest. It's page 6, item 2712, subsection 10, as well as EX 2727, Toronto Public Library capital adjustments. That's on page 7. Although on medical leave, technically my wife still remains an employee of Toronto Public Library.
Thank you. Mayor Tory.
Yes, Madam Speaker, on item PG 22.5, Midtown Heritage Register, out of an abundance of caution, my family has interests in properties at 666 Mount Pleasant Road and 2111 Yonge Street, both of which are not affected by but are in proximity to some of the properties affected by this item.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Sorry, I just put my name in the wrong column, Speaker. I rose to ask Councillor Matlow if he'd be kind enough to circulate that
Yes.
opinion.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, like Councillor Matlow, will rise to report personal privilege after consulting the Integrity Commissioner and the Clerk on item CC 32.12. As this is technically not an MCIA conflict, but has to do with a deceased member of my family. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mamalidi.
Madam Speaker, I guess someone needs to do this. I'm a little concerned about what's happening on the floor of council right now on a point of privilege. I'd like to know more in depth and in detail as to why the Integrity Commissioner is giving members of council the advice that's contrary to law right now. I'd like to know whether or not I have a conflict on the whole agenda, because I know a lot of people in the City of Toronto. And if I know a lot of people in the City of Toronto, do I have to vote on their issues or not? If this is the case, then I'll walk out of council today and I will not come back for the whole meeting.
Oh, yeah. Woo!
So I know that while many of you want me to do that, I also know that I'm standing up on behalf of every member of council right now, because all of you are asking the same questions, and that is, what do we need to do and what don't we need to do? And this is wrong on what's happening with every single case by case. This is nuts. And unless things have changed overnight, which I think are happening in the Integrity Commissioner's office, I think we need a briefing. I need to understand what it is that we should be voting on and what we shouldn't.
Okay,
so
a
point of privilege on behalf of all councillors, I hope.
Thank you. Okay, we will receive a comment from the Integrity Commissioner. Thank you. I will now call for petitions. Are there any petitions at this time? If you can put your name up somewhere. Okay. I don't. Okay, who did I? Councillor Shan? It's on your request. Okay. Councillor Shan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There was a petition launched in my ward last night, and I have over 150 signatures, but it's ongoing, and I would like to present what the petition is asking us to do. It's fairly directing us to communicate to the federal government. The petition is titled Petition for City of Toronto to Recognize the Genocide of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar and Take Action to Bring About a Stop to It. We, the undersigned residents of Toronto, request Toronto City Council to join French President, Servant Nobel, Peace Prize laureates, and Permanent People's Tribunal in Myanmar in declaring the wanton burning of Rohingya villages in Rakhine State, the extrajudicial killings of innocent civilians, and the willful use of sexual violence against women as a textbook case of genocide. They ask us to be actively involved in public awareness campaign within the city to ensure the ongoing genocide of Rohingya Muslims who are religious ethnic minority at the hands of Burmese military ceased immediately. Calling upon respective federal representatives and federal government to commit Canadian troops to peacemaking mission to create safe zones inside Myanmar with a mandate to defend and protect where Rohingya Muslims are allowed to return. Ensure a fair and impartial tribunal is empaneled to prosecute military and civilian leaders responsible for crime against humanity and genocide. Urge the federal government to send Canadian ambassador to Myanmar to assess the situation and allegations of severe human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Conduct an internal audit and clearances. Check all of our city partnerships contracts with businesses who conduct economic activities with Myanmar. In case of such partnerships, seek to use those businesses to pressure Myanmar government economically. The last bullet is about requesting the Canadian government to do 3 more things: assisting relief aid organizations and the Bangladeshi government in airlifting tents, medicine, food supplies on an urgent and regular basis by providing at least 5 transport helicopters that can move these supplies from the airports to remote areas. Substantially increase the commitment and provision of emergency relief assistance, and urge Bangladesh to register all Rohingya refugees, at the very least create a system by which they can document their losses in life, property, for purposes of future investigations and restitution. I just want to finish off by saying that I have signed this petition. It's important for us to recognize human lives are the same regardless of where they're lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bailao.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a petition that was delivered to me this morning from Generation Squeeze, where over 3,000 people have signed the petition calling on a vacant home tax. They go on to say that a vacant home tax could help cool Toronto's housing market by quickly transitioning thousands of existing homes into the rental supply. And right now, the City of Toronto is consulting residents about what a vacant home tax could look like and whether it should be implemented. This measure could be a game changer, they go on to say. They explain the code red housing crisis is complex and there are no silver bullet solutions, but a vacant home tax is a necessary and bold step toward a comprehensive solution.
Thank you. All those in favor of receiving the petitions, recorded vote.
Councillor Fletcher, please.
Councillor Davis, please.
The motion to receive the petitions carries unanimously, 40 in favor.
Thank you. Members, I will now review the order paper. We have 14 deferred items on the agenda. Items LS 20.1, PE 20.4, PG 21.6, PW 22.9, ST 13.4, EY 23.73, NY 2343, TE 2413, TE 2512, TE 2552, TE 2595, CC 32.1, MM 32.1, and MM 32.2. The details of these items are listed on pages 3 to 5 of the order paper. The Mayor has designated the following items as his key matters for this meeting. The first key item will be item EX 27.8, headed Toronto Ravine Strategy. And the second key matter will be item EX 27.15, headed Creating 600 Affordable Rental Homes at the West Downlands. These will be our first and second item of business today. Notices and motions are scheduled to be dealt with at 2 p.m. tomorrow, only if the mayor's key matters have been completed. I propose that City Council set a time for a closed session if required later in the meeting. Members of Council, before I take additional holds, I wish to advise Council on the status of two of the items deferred from the July meeting and make a ruling. The first item is T 25.110 on endorsement of events for liquor licensing purposes has not been reproduced in the materials for this meeting. The City Clerk has advised that all the events listed in that item have already occurred, and any requests for approvals have been dealt with. The second item is PW 22.9 on streetcar service on Queen Street, which recommends that upon completion of construction, the TTC defer reintroduction of streetcar service for a period of 2 weeks. The City Clerk has been advised by the Chief Financial Officer of the TTC that streetcar service has already resumed on Queen Street. Therefore, I'm ruling this item redundant. Okay. The city clerk has noted the items that members wish to hold. I will now go through the items listed on the order paper to take additional holds. I will recognize requests to make matters urgent at time specific after I go through the items for additional holds. Once the order paper has been approved by council, any change will need a 2/3 vote. Page 3. They're all. Page 4. Councillor Fletcher, page 4.
Oh, yes, please. TE 25.12, 772 Queen Street East Site Plan Control Application Final Report. And TE 25.52, permanent closure to vehicular traffic, etc., etc.
You're holding them?
Yes, I'm holding them.
Thank you.
Well, they're without recommendation.
Oh, I thought you moved the
Thank you.
No,
Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I can hold item CC 32.1, Development Charges Bylaw, OMB Appeal by Canada Lands Corp. And Downsview Park for some further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DeGiorgio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to hold at the top of page 4, or near the top, EY 23.73.
Councillor DeBermaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to hold on page 4 at the top of the page, ST 13.4, 2018 Schedule of Meetings.
Now it's all what that's right. That was one you
Thank
wanted.
you. Page 5. Councillor Holliday, page 5.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to hold MM 32.2, supporting the principle for Bill 148, the Fair Workplaces Better Jobs Act 2017.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to hold EX 27.4, third-party election signs advertising enforcement on the Municipal Elections Act.
Page 6. Councillor Davis, page 6.
No, I'm on page 7, so I've...
Okay. Councillor Shiner, page 6.
EX 27.14, creating 298 affordable rental homes in Toronto.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Perks, page 6.
Thank you, Speaker, and good morning. As a parting gift to Mr. Rossini, I would like to hold EX 27.19, the operating variance report for the 6-month period ended June 30, 2017.
Thank you. Councillor Bailao.
Yes, ma'am. 27.17, I would like to move the recommendations. They were circulated first thing this morning. And if there's any issues, I can certainly hold it. Okay.
Who said hold?
Let's just hold it.
You'll continue, you'll hold it?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Councillor Bell, I was just holding the item that I wish to have held.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Page 7. Councillor Holliday.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to hold HL 21.14, motion to reduce the number of doorings in Toronto. I've got some questions.
Councillor Cressy.
No.
No? Okay.
Stephen.
Councillor Burnside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. HL 21.13. Naloxone training.
Councillor Matlow.
Madam Speaker, page 7, CD 22.5, I'd like to release it just with a brief comment. On behalf of, I believe, all of us, I want to acknowledge the hard work of the Toronto Seniors Forum and our gratitude for their advice and their advocacy for seniors and age-friendly related issues across our city. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Matlow is releasing CD 22.5. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Page 7, EX 27.31, further direction of the city manager on the study of the commuter parking crisis in Toronto.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yes, CD 22.
22 what?
Which is the impact of CPIP grants, SDFA request for approval of new initiatives. There's a supplemental report. I think we receive it.
Is this
It's got no specific recommendations, I know, so we don't even receive it. Okay, then I will just release the hold.
Councillor, I'm sorry, Councillor Davis, which item? CD 22.6?
22.6. There was.
Oh, okay.
Then I'll maintain the hold.
Okay. Councillor Cressy.
I took my name off.
Well, it's still there.
His lights aren't working.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll release on page 7, CD 22.3.
Okay. Councillor Campbell is releasing page 7, CD 22.3. All in favor?
Speaker, on a point of order.
Sorry. Sorry.
For the benefit of the public, it's the tradition that we always read the title as well as the number so they know what we're releasing. We
Okay.
can just have the title of that, please.
Okay, Councillor Robinson would like to hold it. This was CD 22.3, Ontario Early Years Child and Family Centers Planning. Councillor Ainsley.
Page 8.
Okay. Page 8, Councillor Ainsley.
Now we are, David. Sorry. I'll turn the page. At the bottom of the page, GM 22.9 awarded the Swiss Challenge request for proposal number 3204-17-7034. I'd like to hold it. Staff have a technical amendment to it that I need to move when it's ready.
That's on page 8, the bottom of the page, GM 22.9. Councillor Ainsley is holding. Councillor Ainsley?
I've now been told by the clerk's office that I can move this item.
Okay, can we put it on the screen, please? Oh,
Okay, so I'll hold it. in my name.
continue holding it, okay. Councillor Crisanti.
Page 8. So, thank you, Madam Speaker. Page 8 at the bottom of the page, GM 22.7, award of request for proposal, pharmacy services at various City of Toronto long-term care homes. I'm releasing that.
Okay. On page 8, Councillor Crisanti is releasing GM 22.7. All in favor? Carried. Councillor DiCiano, are you on page 8? Councillor DiCiano?
Yep, page 9, first item.
Oh, okay, just a sec. Everyone else on that is page 9? Page 9? Okay.
Thanks.
Page 9.
Yep,
Councillor
first
DiCiano.
item is GM 22.11, non-competitive contracts with Track Vehicle Repair and Littner Poma Canada Inc. for proprietary parts and services. I'd like to hold that, please.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Speaker. GM 22.2, waiving late payment penalties and fees for property tax payments.
What, I'm sorry.
Sorry, 2222, sorry. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Forgot the other two.
Wait, 2222, waiving late payment penalties and fees for property tax payments. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I won't repeat the same mistake twice. Releasing GM 22.29, release of residential units, 414 Dawes Road, Ward 31. I don't think I need to read the bit about the confidential
No,
attachment.
you read it. Okay? So Councillor Campbell is releasing GM 22.29. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Perks?
Sorry, Councillor Thompson held the item I was interested in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to now page 10. Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. LS 21.1, tow truck industry review and recommendations. I'd like to hold that as well, please.
Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 10, GM 22.34, 1797 St. Clair Avenue West expropriation settlement with Imperial Oil, Ward 17, including the confidential attachment.
Okay, that's on
Yeah, I'm
page
holding that
10.
one.
GM 22.34, 1797 St. Clair Avenue West, expropriation settlement. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to go back to page 9. I missed one. What I missed was GM 22.31, settlement of expropriation of 1229 Ellesmere Road.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ainslie, on page 10.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On Parks and Environment Committee meeting number 21, PE 21.5, City of Toronto Energy Storage Strategy. I can release that. I have my questions answered by staff.
Okay, on page 10, P 21.5, Councillor Ainslie is releasing recorded vote. That's on the City of Toronto Energy Storage Strategy.
Councillor McMahon, please, and Councillor Wong-Tam.
The item carries unanimously, 41 in favor.
Thank you. Page 11. Councillor Davis, are you on page 11? Okay. Page 11.
PW 23.3, minor amendment to City of Toronto street naming policy.
Thank you. Councillor Cressy, page 11.
Thank you, Speaker. I had intended to hold the same item. Can I just note, the buttons on my console are not working, and I can't seem to take my name off request to speak or request to question staff. No, they're not working.
Okay, just a sec. Wait till I call the page number before members of council put their names on the screen, because they're getting all mixed up. So we're finished page 11. Oh, we're still on page 11. Okay, Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Speaker. PG 22.9, city-initiated St. Clair Avenue study between Old Weston Road and Blackthorn Avenue, Spring Grove. I'd like to hold that item.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Perks, page 11.
Thank you, Speaker. PW 23.7, Waste Reduction Community Investment Program, pilot phase. There shouldn't be.
Deputy Mayor Menon Wong, page 11.
Yes, I'd like to hold PW 23.9, Eglinton Crosstown LRT at-grade segment traffic bylaw amendments.
We'll go to the next page. Page 12. Councillor Fragedakis, do you have a point of order?
Yes, I do. I was wondering, we're just about to go on to page 12, and I was wondering if we could just finish the review of the order paper before we break for lunch, which is in about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, motion to extend if we have to. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, page 12, Councillor Davis?
I just missed one more. I think there's only one left, but...
on what page,
On
Councillor
page 11.
Okay.
Which is PW 23.1, consent to assignment of contract 15 TW, etc., for on-demand water service replacement for various locations in Toronto, East York, and Scarborough districts for installation of new residential water and sewer connections and associated works within the Toronto and East York district.
Okay. Councillor Palacio, page 12.
Thank you, Speaker. EY 24.51, endorsement of events for liquor licenses purpose, wards 6, 12, 13, and 17.
Okay.
Number 51.
So that's on EY 24.51, page 12, endorsement of events for liquor licenses. Councillor Thompson, page 12.
Thank you very much, Speaker. NY 24.3, request for direction report, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications, 5840, 5868, 5870 Yonge Street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McMahon, page 12.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Speaker. EY 24.49, Emery Village First Nations Park.
Thank you. Page 13, Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd actually simply like to request a couple of recorded votes, the first being NY 24.43, application to remove a private tree, 42 Moss Grove Trail.
And then 2445 as well?
No, 24.11 and 24.13.
Okay, so let's do 25. Recorded vote is requested on page 13, NY 2443, application to remove a private tree at 42 Moss Grove Trail. Recorded vote. Pardon?
Councillor Davis, please, and Councillor Thompson. Councillor Karygiannis, your vote, please.
Councillor Cole and Councillor Fillion, please.
The item carries 35-6.
Councillor Holliday?
I pushed the red button by mistake to begin with, and I pushed the green, so I'd like my vote to
I don't think it really matters. It's not an election issue.
Speaker, I voted in the affirmative on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let the record show.
Councillor Karygiannis is asking to reopen. Councillor Perks is moving on behalf. On favor? Carried. Okay, so recorded vote.
Councillor Peruzza, your vote, please. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Filion and Councillor Mihevik, please.
The item carries 36-5.
Councillor Holliday?
Thank you, Speaker. I would also like a recorded vote on SC 24.11, application to remove 2 private trees, 50 Wexford Boulevard.
Recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, please. Councillor Peruzza. Councillor McMahon, please.
The item carries 34-7.
Councillor Holliday?
Thank you, Speaker. One more, SC 24.13, application to remove a private tree, 86 Conference Boulevard. May I request a recorded vote?
Recorded vote.
Councillor Karagianis, please. And thank you. Councillor Peruzza, please.
Councillor Fletcher, please.
The item carries 37-4.
Page 14. Wow. Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm prepared to release item TE 26.3, permanent closure of a public lane at the rear of 738-782 Bathurst Street, and give my thanks to real estate staff who are here, as well as planning for making this all work. This will result in the city owning a piece of property on the new West Bank development at Mirvish Village that will turn into a community space for the black community who was featured prominently at that corner for many, many decades.
Thank you. So Councillor Layton is releasing on page 14 ET 26.3, permanent closure of the public lane at the rear of 738-782 Bathurst Street, extending between Bloor Street West and Lennox Street. Recorded vote.
Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Filion, thank you.
Councillor Peruzza, please. Councillor Wong Tam.
Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Fletcher, may we have your vote, please?
The item carries 39-1.
Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to hold item T.
Speaker.
What?
I actually voted in the affirmative. I don't know why I recorded that.
I'm sorry?
Speaker, not for anything, but can I just get the vote registered in the affirmative?
Motion to
I
reopen.
didn't want to vote against the
Okay.
release.
Okay,
Motion to reopen, Madam
who can move it? Councillor Karygiannis. To reopen the vote, all in favor, carried. Recorded vote, let's do it again.
Councillor McMahon, please. Councillor Davis.
The item carries unanimously, 40 in favor.
Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to hold item TE 26.14, designation of the Kings Spadina Heritage Conservation District.
Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to hold TE 26.11, 25 Ontario Street and 280 King Street East zoning amendment application final report 428.
So you did circulate the event motion, correct?
I did, yes. And I mean, if everyone is prepared, we can also just move that amendment.
No, apparently, you want to hold it, Councillor Shiner?
No, I'll hold it then.
Okay. Continue to hold it.
Thank you.
T 26.11. Okay, so Councillor Mary Fragadakis had moved a motion to extend to complete the consent agenda. All in favor? Okay. Yeah, well, just to legalize it. Page 15. Councillor Matlow.
Great coffee.
Madam Speaker, on page 15, I'd like to hold TE 26.25, 85, 87, 89, and 91 Broadway Avenue and 198 Redpath Avenue, zoning amendment and rental housing demolition applications, request for direction report.
Thank you. Page 16. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's actually on page 15. You moved quicker than I could. TE 26.30, 307 Sherburne Street, official plan amendment, zoning amendment application, request for directions report.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Page 16, Councillor Fragadakis.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm not going to hold them. I just want a recorded vote on items 26.67, 68, and 69, construction staging area time extensions.
Okay. So on page 16, T 2667, Councillor Fragadakis has asked for recorded vote, construction staging area time extension, 40 Wellesley Street. Recorded vote. Oh, sorry.
I'd
Mayor
like to
Tory?
hold 63, 67, 68, and 69. They're all construction staging areas. I'd like to hold those, please.
You'd like to hold it? Okay. Thank you. DiCiano,
Page 17, Madam Speaker.
page 17.
Item CC 32.4, the Toronto Investment Board, appointment of public members. I'm not going to hold the item, but I do want to take an opportunity to thank, the committee members, Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Karygiannis, who worked diligently for many, many months. But most importantly, I want to thank our finance staff who worked with us over those many months. This was a process that we didn't think was going to take this long, but it did. And I can't tell you how important this board is going to become in the future of Toronto's finances. You know that the province gave us the ability to start putting the billions we have in reserves into the capital markets, and we're doing that with this new board. And the people that have been selected to be our stewards on this matter are the best of the best in the industry, and it's really something when people as smart and well-known can have the intention to serve the city on this. So I'm really, really pleased with the outcome, and I want to thank staff and the committee for playing a big role. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker,
He
CC
didn't hold it.
32.5.
Councillor Shiner? No, he didn't hold it. Councillor Shiner, go ahead, sorry.
We're here now?
Yes.
Thank you. CC 32.5, 89 to 101 Roehampton, request for direction report. I would like to hold that.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yes?
CC 32.6, 4 and 6 Tippett Road, official plan and zoning amendment. Application is request for direction. I would like to hold that as well.
Okay.
CC 32.6.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Would you register my interest, please, in 32.5?
And what's the nature?
I own property in that immediate area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Okay, Mayor Tory.
Madam Speaker, as Councillor Al-Jamari, I just, while we're on this page 32.7, on page 17, 158 Sterling Road, I had thought I didn't have to declare an interest, but my son has an agreement of purchase and sale for a condominium unit nearby, and so out of an abundance of caution, I'll declare an interest there.
Thank you. Okay, and Councillor Al-Jamari, I already got your names there. Okay, so Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, I've risen on a point of privilege.
Okay, Councillor Fragadakis.
Sorry, I'm trying to actually press my button to register that I'd like to hold something on page 17, and I can't.
That's because, as I indicated, that until I say what page it is, you put your name up. People are throwing their names on there, and we're still on the previous page, and that's why it gets canceled. So you have to wait until I say what page. That's why all the names are messed up.
Okay, but I'd like to have my name somehow.
Okay,
page
I'll
17.
acknowledge you, Councillor Fragadakis. So, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We're on page 17.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
I'm going to hold CC 32.12, renaming of public properties after former members of council.
Yes. Okay, Councillor Fragadakis, on page 17?
Yes, CC 32.8, Ombudsman Toronto Report, Inquiry into a Complaint about the Committee of Adjustment Notice Procedures. I'd like to hold that item.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. On page 17, the top of the page, CC 32.2, declaring the office of Councillor Ward 28, Toronto Centre, Rosedale vacant, and deciding the method to fill the vacancy. That item needs to be held. Who can hold that item? Deputy Mayor, okay. Needs to be held. All right. So any more on page 17? No. Okay, that's it. No, we have to finish. We're not finished yet. Oh, Councillor Holyday, your name's up there. Is it there for a reason?
Speaker, I'd just like to add my name to the queue for the making items timed.
Okay, I'm going to go through it, and I'll acknowledge that. Okay. The city clerk has noted the items that, I did that, okay. Are there any questions to make an item urgent and time specific? Councillor, we'll do Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to make time specific as soon as I get the number here. It's on page page 5, EX 27.1, Toronto Hydro Corporation Annual General Meeting and 2016 Audited Financial Statements. I'm going to suggest the timing be immediately following member motions on day 2.
Okay. On favor? Carried. Councillor Palacio?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 10, LS 21.1 tow truck industry review. If we can deal with this on Wednesday, first item of the day. I understand that there is a lot of people coming from the tow industry.
Well,
Councilor DiCiano has held the item.
Yeah, Councilor Palacio, we have to, we can't do it Wednesday. We have the mayor's key items first to complete.
I'm asking for Wednesday.
Huh?
Wednesday.
Will be finished by Wednesday? Okay, so this is first thing on Wednesday? Yeah, can you repeat that, please, Councilor Palacio? On page?
Yeah.
Which item?
LS 21.1.
What page, what page?
That's page number 10,
Okay.
and it deals with the tow truck industry review. I understand that there are hundreds of operators that they are attending, and they have to work as well. So instead of spending
So,
4 days,
Councilor
within the next
Palacio,
couple of days,
Councilor Palacio, that was on page 10, LS 21.1.
1.
Okay. So that's the tow truck industry review and recommendations. You're moving that it be dealt with first thing Wednesday morning?
Wednesday morning.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilor Palacio. All in favor? Carry. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Speaker. It's an item on page number 8, CD 22.12. It is being held by Councillor Fletcher, and it's the Toronto Fire Service Operations Recruiting Class 2017-01. I'm wondering if this matter could be dealt with on Wednesday afternoon. The Deputy Fire Chief is here. Certainly don't want him to be sitting around for the next couple of days. We'd like to invite him back maybe in the afternoon on Wednesday after lunch.
Well, sorry, Councilor Thompson, Wednesday afternoon, after lunch, we're doing the members' motions. And
After the members' motion.
Yes, but we already voted on a motion by Councilor Holliday to do the timed item.
I thought we did the members' motion on Tuesday, Speaker.
Oh, tomorrow's Tuesday.
Yeah, it's been a weird week. Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally understand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That was
totally
an Emily
understand.
Latella moment.
So, yes.
Usually we start council on Tuesday.
Exactly, and that's what got us actually today,
so
Speaker. So you're
tomorrow-
absolutely right.
Right.
So Wednesday, if that's okay with you, Speaker?
Wednesday afternoon
Yes.
at 2
2
p.m.
p.m.?
Okay.
It's fantastic. Thank you.
On favor, carried. Councilor Pasternak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Page 5, 2711, commuter parking options is actually held by Councillor Ford. I'd like to put that on Wednesday, the second item after, I believe it's tow truck regulations.
We just did that.
No, yeah, so after, the first item Wednesday morning is tow truck options, tow truck regulations. I'm asking that this follow it.
So following the tow truck. Oh, Councilor Pasternak. Well, you know what, maybe we better recess. Yeah, because it looks like it. So Councilor Perks, you will speak on it when we get back from lunch. Yeah. Okay. Recess for lunch. I know we'll have to wait